Hello people, this is Sonali, the Melodramatic Bookworm. If you've been here before, welcome back, and if you're new to my channel, welcome to the Melodramatic Bookworm family. Also welcome to the reading vlog for the June 2024 subscriber pick, which is Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. For those of you who don't know, subscriber picks are monthly reading vlogs in which you, my subscribers, choose from among 4 or 5 options one book for me to read, vlog and share my thoughts about with you. And the book that you chose for me to read, vlog and share my thoughts about with you as subscriber pick for the month of June 2024 was Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin, a classic that's been on my TBR for way longer than I'd care to admit. All I know about this book is that it is said to be one of the most heartbreakingly beautiful books out there, written by a writer and an activist who brought themes of human experiences and deaths and love and passion to his books. And I don't know much else about this book except that it is set in Paris. So before I start reading it, let me read out the blurb for you as well as for myself. James Baldwin's groundbreaking novel about love and the fear of love is set among the bohemian bars and nightclubs of 1950s Paris. David, a young American expatriate, has just proposed marriage to his girlfriend Hella, but in her absence becomes intensely involved with an Italian barman called Giovanni. Their affair reaches a tragic climax on Hella's return when David is forced to choose between Giovanni's supreme gift of freedom and the safety of conventional morality. Baldwin brings sharp, probing insight to this impassioned, deeply moving story, which lays bare the unspoken complexities of the human heart. Oh, there's an introduction by Combe Toybin, but I'm not going to read the introduction at first because I have a feeling there are going to be spoilers for the book as it has happened so many times before. Without any further ado, let's dive right into this reading vlog and let's start reading the subscriber pick for the month of June 2024, which is Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. Already learning a lot and the book hasn't even started. The story. Hi there, I've just finished reading the first chapter of this book of Giovanni's Room, and there's no footage, but I've already teared up a couple of times because James Baldwin's writing makes you do that. He found new ways of making the mundane, the usual, the sad sound like poetry. So we are introduced to the main character David as he looks out of the window of his Paris home and he is thinking about Giovanni and Hella, and in this process he recollects the lie that he stole Giovanni and is then pulled into the past where he goes over his relationship with his father. The first chapter covers only this much, but it's also not fair to say only because we do get a glimpse into David as a main character. And moving back to the poetic writing, here are a couple of examples. First is the very simple sentence, which is an example of what I mean when he takes the mundane, takes the sad and turns it into poetry. My mother had been carried to the graveyard when I was 5. Carried to the graveyard. And to this my response was, why is this simple sentence, this simple turn of phrase about death making me emotional? It made me fall in love with James Baldwin's writing, and I was only on page 12. And this quote about people who claim to be masters of their own destiny, which again I had to read thrice because a bulb went off in my head. Let me read it out for you. People who believe that they are strong-willed and the masters of their destiny can only continue to believe this by becoming specialists in self-deception. Their decisions are not really decisions at all. A real decision makes one humble. One knows that it is at the mercy of more things than can be named, but elaborate systems of evasion, of illusion, designed to make themselves and the world appear to be what they and the world are not. It sort of gave me validation, you know what I mean? And lastly, the author's, or rather David's, opinion about finding oneself, which in my opinion makes perfect sense and asks some very interesting questions, even though the quote itself is short. Here it is. Perhaps, as we say in America, I wanted to find myself. This is an interesting phrase, not current as far as I know in the language of any other people, which certainly does not mean what it says, but betrays a nagging suspicion that something has been misplaced. And to that, I asked, does this mean that we started off as purely ourselves, but misplaced ourselves along the way? I think I'm about 15% into the book. This book has 160 pages and I'm on page 23 right now. But I'm going to have to take a break at this point, a long one at that, because we are traveling to India for a visit, and that means no vlogging, with exceptions, and no video filming while we are there. But I will pick it back up as soon as we are back. So I'll see you in a while. Until then, hi there. So it's the 19th of August and we've been back from our trip to India for a couple of weeks now. But I was sick for the whole of the first week that we were back, and I'm only now getting back to normal. And at this point I'm looking at an end of August timeline for this vlog to go up, because I am making slow progress. It's slow, but it's progress. But I knew that before I moved on with a book, I'd have to reread or at least skim through the pages. Even if it's just one chapter, a reintroduction was needed very, very much. And oh my god, it took me right back into the zone, and I got so invested that I managed to read one more chapter before I made this update. Here are some of my thoughts about this book. The thing that sits at the top of my head is that David, in his need to be normal and his natural queerness, sometimes ends up thinking and saying some pretty icky, transphobic and homophobic stuff. For example, look at this section of a paragraph where he is in a bar and he's looking around and he sees all these femme-dressing men, and he thinks, not says, I always found it difficult to believe that they ever went to bed with anybody. For a man who wanted a woman would certainly have rather had a real one, and a man who wanted a man would certainly not want one of them. Perhaps indeed that was why they screamed so loud. There was the boy who worked all day, it was said in the post office, who came out at night wearing makeup and earrings and with his heavy blonde hair piled high. Sometimes he actually wore a skirt and high heels. He usually stood alone unless Guillaume walked over to tease him. People said that he was very nice, but I confess that his utter grotesqueness made me uneasy. Perhaps in the same way that the sight of monkeys eating their own excrement turns some people's stomachs. They might not mind so much if monkeys did not so grotesquely resemble human beings. I feel like society has conditioned us into internalizing these feelings, this worship of the gender binary, the othering and diminishing of anyone who dares to be anything else. And that's even if the characters here themselves are queer. So equating these others with animals is, I think, how conservative and orthodox people justify their own thoughts. And this wound, it festers and it spreads slowly until and unless it is cauterized using the treatment or the salve that is an inclusive mind. I mentioned in my previous update that the writing is poetic, and that holds up here as well. Like, it is so poetic that it flows so freely and you just want to keep reading. But now and again, that's something in the conversation or something the author says, one thought, it just stops you in your tracks. Phrases like out of desperation or emotional poverty or arrogance on an auction block or the ocean doesn't care. These are some phrases, some turns of phrases that it just makes you want to drink them and extract their true meanings from their depths. I'm kicking myself for not having read this book before. Plus, the thing about this chapter is that it has the power to shock you and make you sad in equal measure. Like James Baldwin, what he does is he peppers the story with little details that you do a double take at, like, huh, what? And then as you continue reading them, these details will stick to your brain. And all of this is impeccably written and I cannot find fault with it. And it might be a little early in the book to say this, but I think this is going to be one of my rare 5-star reads for 2024, and I think I'm going to leave it at that because I don't want to jinx it by saying anything more than that. Hi there. So I just finished part 1 of Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin, and I'm happy to report that it's going very well as far as the writing is concerned. And I think I didn't mention this in my previous update, but we were introduced to Giovanni in chapter 2, and in chapter 3, which I just finished, we are introduced to the titular Giovanni's Room, which kind of holds a strange sort of power over you until you encounter it in conversation. And even after knowing what you know from the book's context clues about what's going to happen, it fills you with dread. And I sort of kept zoning out of the story, not because it was bad, but because impending sadness always kind of, takes me out of my own self. And this comes after David describes Paris with grim but beautiful words, which are not always favorable, but they reach for your heart. I looked out beyond his heavy profile, which was grey from fatigue and from the light of the sky above us. The river was swollen and yellow. Nothing moved on the river. Barges were tied up along the banks. The island of the city widened away from us, bearing the weight of the cathedral. Beyond this, dimly, through speed and mist, one made out the individual roofs of Paris, their myriad, squat chimney stacks, very beautiful and very colored under the pearly sky. Mist clung to the river, softening that army of trees, softening those stones, hiding the city's dreadful corkscrew alleys and dead-end streets, clinging like a curse to the men who slept beneath the bridges, one of whom flashed by beneath us, very black and lone, walking along the river. And I was like, I can see Paris in front of my eyes. I mean, it's a very misty, a very hazy description too, and it's not, like I said, it's not always favorable, but oh my god, James Baldwin. I have a bad feeling about Guillaume and Jacques though, especially Guillaume. He is an elitist snob and he gives off such creepy vibes, and especially going by what Giovanni tells David, it just makes me want to, But moving on from him, there is one long paragraph in here. I mean, there are many to be honest, but this particular one, it just had me rereading it in awe. Because to have such an imagination, to think of something like this and to put it in words in a way that will have the readers wondering if this is true too, I mean, that's a kind of power that I don't think anybody can wield the way James Baldwin does. And throughout the book, there are French terms and idioms that had me running to Google Translate to help me out. I mean, quite a few of them I could understand because of the context or because they are well known across the world or whatever. But some of them which I didn't know, when I looked them up, they just sort of left me scandalized at what they were trying to say in the way that they were being said. It's not really scandalized, maybe a milder version of it, but it was there. And then there is David's intermittent longing to go back home to where people know him, to people that he loves. It kind of reflects my own loneliness and my inner battles about what I think about living abroad. The overarching story, however, is about how LGBTQI plus people were not allowed to love who they wanted to love. Society has always had this gender binary where women have to do these certain things and men have to do these certain things. Women have to love men and men have to love women, and anything else is dubbed unnatural. And any deviation would cause ridicule, increasing and amplifying until it saw their deaths. And Giovanni's Room is a book that depicts all of this, and I can feel it in the first 68 pages itself, and I can feel it emanating off those pages. This book was published in 1956, and the sad part is that many parts of society, even today, think the exact same way. They think that LGBTQI plus people are unnatural, that they should not exist. It's baffling also how they think that somebody else's love life is any of their business. How does it affect them? It doesn't, but they have to have an opinion about that. A harmful opinion, no less. Will they stop domestic abuse? Will they stop rapes? Will they stop child abuse? No. They'll be like, ye ghar ka mamla hai. They'll blame everybody apart from the criminal who does it. But someone loving another quietly, and they'll start roaring. This is the society that we are expected to bring children into? Give me a break. Okay, I do need a break. Otherwise, I'm going to explode with anger. See you soon. Hi there. So I have been reading this book, and I've only gotten through another chapter before I really wanted to come here and rail against something, and that was about how much I don't like either of the characters right now. I don't like David, I don't like Giovanni, but I dislike Giovanni a little bit more. I have very good reasons for that. This starts off with David and Giovanni in Giovanni's room, and they are talking, they are drinking coffee and cognac, and they are talking about things, and the subject comes to Hella, who is kind of David's betrothed. And there are a few pages where I just wanted to mark the whole pages in red because of how Giovanni talked about women in general, and specifically about Hella. So through this, I just found out that Giovanni is, in addition to other things, he is also sexist. And there's another explanation that came up. I was looking through a Reddit thread because I was trying to find out if anybody else thought the same way as me. But here is something that he says. Oh, nobody likes to travel, especially not women. There must be some other reason. He raised his eyebrows suggestively. Perhaps she has a Spanish lover and is afraid to tell you. Perhaps she is with a torero. Torero is a bullfighter. And then in the same page, somewhere down the line, she says, well, I thought she might be an older woman with a husband somewhere, and perhaps she had to go away with him from time to time in order to be able to continue her affair with you. That would be a nice arrangement. Those women are sometimes very interesting, and they usually have a little money. If that woman was in Spain, she would bring back a wonderful gift for you. But a young girl bouncing around in a foreign country by herself, I do not like that at all. You should find another mistress. Who asked you your opinion about all that? You do not like it, so stew. Like, she didn't ask you for permission. David is not asking you for permission. I'll get back to David in a moment. And then he has the audacity to say, I am not trying to be méchant. I don't know what that word is. When I talk about women, I respect women very much for their inside life, which is not like the life of a man. No, you don't. No, you don't. Your actions, your words, they're literally telling us that you don't respect women. You literally think of them as unequal, as low lives. And to this, David says, women don't seem to like that idea. And Giovanni goes, oh well, these absurd women running around today full of ideas and nonsense and thinking themselves equal to men, they need to be beaten half to death so that they can find out who rules the world. And David laughed. I was so pissed off. Like, I have like 3 voice notes in my phone where I just went on yelling about Giovanni and about how he was being such a sexist pig. When I went on the internet to see if anybody else thought similar to me in the same way as I do. So there was one question on Reddit where someone asked whether they gave all these examples and said Giovanni is misogynistic and I was put off and all of that, to which one person responded, it's been a while since I read Giovanni's Room, but I'll give my take. Giovanni doesn't hate women, he hates heteronormativity. And in this sense, his comments aren't attacking women, but are instead underhanded jabs at David's perceived bisexual fence sitting. His underlying emotions can be translated as, can't you see we don't need women? We just need each other. Please, David, just accept that you're gay. Okay, I sense what this writer is trying to say, what this commenter is trying to say, but I'm going to pick this apart, okay? If you are resorting to bringing down women to make your case, it is still sexism. It is still misogyny. You're not doing any other woman a favor by saying that I don't hate you, I'm just using you as an excuse to rail against something or someone so that I can make my point. No, we have enough of that in our lives. Heteronormativity is something to be hated, but you don't have to bring women down to rail against heteronormativity. So many women are your allies. Blanket statements aren't right. So if Giovanni wanted to tell David off for his, as mentioned here, perceived bisexual fence sitting, which David does wrong, by the way, because okay, let's get to him at a later point, but you have to tell David directly off. Don't use hate on women to push forward your agenda. Men using women as stones to further their own personal agendas or political agendas or whatever it is always wrong. I don't care what kind of reason you have behind it. If you're using women to step on to step on the concept of a woman and then to make your point, then that's not making a point. That's being misogynistic. Maybe that is your point, that you are a misogynistic character. And David, come on, David is a character who cannot make up his mind. Like this commenter says, which I agree with, the fence sitting. Just stop. Or make a decision, one of those two things. And I am so pissed off. I don't think I can read another chapter today because I'm just flaring up at the very thought of this, and I'm turning the pages and I see all the red and I am seeing red. Because Giovanni is not a likable character at all, and neither is David, but Giovanni is at that point where he's like, women should be beaten half to death because they think they are equal to men. Bro. And I get it. I get that they are a product of their time and all that, which is not an excuse, by the way. They are brought up in such families, they were brought up in such times, and they think that way. And I get it that there has to be some sort of a character quality or a character trait that has to be there because it is set during that time, right? So we have to know what kind of a character that is. Till there it is fine, but I don't have to like a character, right? So I don't like Giovanni. I mean, I know the whole overarching story. I know that this is a story about, okay, I won't say that, but there have been mentions about this before in the book. So I know that this book isn't a happy one. It's going to be a sad one, and it's going to be absolutely heartbreaking. And my heart breaks for Giovanni even now. But that doesn't mean that I like the character. I can feel bad for a character, my heart can break for a character, even while disliking what that person believes. Because whatever happens, he doesn't deserve it. Okay, anyway, maybe I'm talking in riddles at this point, but I'm on page 80 right now. I finished the first chapter in part 2, and I'm going to leave it at that for the day. Since my last update, I've read 2 chapters in which I've seen more layers emerge, both of David and of Giovanni. They're afraid, both men. One of the consequences of living according to society's arbitrary rules, and the other of the consequences of not adhering to them. And to watch them struggle against themselves and each other was an experience that made me sad to have had. Here is a quote that appears early in chapter 2 of part 2. Life in that room seemed to be occurring underwater, as I say, and it is certain that I underwent a sea change there. And this pretty much sums up the entirety of this book. There are a lot of French terms that come up as part of the conversations, but that is to be expected because they are literally in Paris. This reminded me of how in family lore I was a little annoyed at the excessive Spanish, and I'm trying to recollect if the amount of Spanish there and the amount of French here are the same. If yes, why was I irritated then? Why am I not put off now? And could the reason be that that was a 300 plus page book while this is just about 160 pages? I cannot tell. There are descriptions of Paris and of life in general that are so achingly beautiful, I became a little misty-eyed from it all. For example, I stared at absurd Paris, which was as cluttered now under the scalding sun as the landscape of my heart. Followed by things David says that could be applied to my life as well, questions he asks that I have asked as well, him wondering about the world and life and death that I have wondered as well. It's somber and thought-provoking and sad and makes you look at life from both perspectives. It's strange the hold this book has on your mind because even when I'm not reading it, I'm thinking of it. And I must say that there are some things Giovanni says, as much as I dislike the man, that do make total sense. There is a brand of realistic worldview in his words that make you fall backwards into your own thoughts. It makes you a little sad. I don't think I can say anything else at this point without either spoiling the experience for myself or for you if you haven't read the book yet. So I'm going to wrap this part up and go read the last 2 chapters of the book. I'll give you my final thoughts on it when I get back. Hi there. I finished reading this book, Giovanni's Room, last night, and I must tell you that as I did, my blood ran cold. Because the directions that this book takes, the way it examines the human mind and its humanity when pressed on by society and its whims, and the fear of being oneself because of the said whims, acts of desperation, it will claw into your mind and stay there. There is plenty of shock factor in the last couple of chapters, but when you sit back and think about why whatever happened, it does make sense in a strange sort of way. I mean, I'm not condoning, just understanding. I see why Giovanni's Room is a cornerstone of LGBTQI plus literature, because the pain, the pressure that society put on queer people back then when same-sex love was illegal, it reflects off of these pages in ways that transcends mere words. I mean, society is still massively close-minded about the acceptance and the recognition of the fact that people are entitled to love whoever they want and to be whoever they want, but things were way worse back then. We see David, the main character, fighting between two sides of himself. To be with Hela in a society-approved heterosexual relationship where he has a woman to come home to and to have babies with, or to listen to his heart and be with Giovanni while flouting society's rules. And his indecision causes pain to everyone involved, himself included. I have told you about how I dislike David and Giovanni, but as I neared the end of the book, I sort of had a strange understanding of why they were the way they were. I mean, it doesn't excuse the misogyny. I'm still pissed at them about that, by the way, but to fight these battles with oneself, with the person, with the people one loves, and with the world at large will break something inside a person. It will turn them into something they might have once hated, might being the operative word here. The thing is, cruelty comes out of the gut in these situations and it extends outwards. We see it manifested in these characters, in these pages, and it's equal parts angering and painful to read because you now know the backstory. There is an introduction by Colm Toibin, author of books like Brooklyn and Long Island, which is at the beginning of this book, but I read it after I read the story and I'm glad I did because I like the way how Toibin sheds light on certain aspects of the story, but I also didn't like how he kept comparing Baldwin's writing to that of Hemingway. It was mostly white authors that he was comparing his writing to. All in all, Giovanni's Room is a story that is as long as it's short, because this book, at least this edition, might be just 159 pages long, but it feels like it is longer, and I mean that in the best way possible, because it talks of bisexual, gay and queer love in a live and let live manner that empowers it. A full 5 out of 5 stars from me, something that I saw from a mile away before I started this book, but which I did not expect in the middle of the book going by my reactions. But this is an absolute must read. So if you haven't read this already, please do. So that was a subscriber pick for the month of June 2024, which I'm uploading this late due to circumstances that I have mentioned in previous videos. But the book in question is Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. What did you think of this reading vlog? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Have you read Giovanni's Room? If yes, what did you think of it? If not, will you pick this book up after watching my reading vlog? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. If you like this video, please like it and share it to spread the word. And if you like my content and would like to see more from me, don't forget to hit subscribe and click on the bell icon beside the subscribe button to get notified as and when I post new videos. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Until next time, keep reading, keep watching, and add melodrama to your life.